about the last time someone's words moved you. Maybe it was a speech that gave you chills. Maybe it was a leader who made you feel seen, heard, protected. Or maybe, and this is the harder one to admit, maybe it was someone whose words you believed completely until you realized you shouldn't have. Welcome to OATS Uncut. I am Vineeta Khanna, founder of Orator Academy, civic leader and someone who has spent decades at the intersection of communication and community. And today, I want to talk about something that is impossible to ignore right now. The extraordinary power of a leader's voice and what happens when that power is used for good and when it is not. We're not here to talk about specific politicians or point fingers at parties. We are here to talk about rhetoric, the ancient art of persuasion, and how understanding it is one of the most important things you can do, we all can do, as a citizen, as parents, as human beings in the year 2026. So let's get into it. What is rhetoric and why should you care? Let's address that. Rhetoric, the word itself sounds old, academic, even a little stuffy. But I want you to hear it differently today. Rhetoric is simply the craft of using language to influence people. And every single leader in politics, in business, in your school board, in your place of worship, uses it every single day. The ancient Greeks knew this. Aristotle wrote about 3 pillars of persuasion that I address in my class as well. Ethos, credibility. Who are you and why should I trust you? Pathos, as I say it, or pathos, as you may say it. Emotion, how do you make me feel? And logos, logic, what's the evidence? What's the argument? Great leaders use all 3 of these in balance, but here's the danger. Rhetoric without integrity leans almost entirely on pathos or pathos. It bypasses your logic, it overwhelms your skepticism, it speaks directly to your fear, your anger, your longing to belong. Think about the speeches that have shaped history, for better or for worse. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream. That speech is one of the most masterful uses of rhetoric ever delivered. It was emotionally galvanizing, morally grounded, and backed by the lived reality of millions. That's rhetoric in service of truth. But history also gives us leaders who used identical techniques, the repetition, the crowd energy, the simple enemy narrative to lead people toward catastrophe. The tools are the same. The integrity behind them is different. So let's look into the playbook and how leaders inspire or perhaps manipulate. Let's look at the specific techniques that leaders may use, the ones that can uplift or undermine, depending on who's wielding them. Number 1, the simple story. Humans are wired for narrative. A good leader tells a story. Here's where we were, here's what went wrong, and here's how we get to a better place. That arc is powerful because it's true to how we experience life. But a manipulative leader hijacks that same structure by oversimplifying. We had everything, they took it, I will get it back. 3 sentences, no complexity, no nuance, and dangerously appealing when people are scared. Number 2, repetition and the anchor phrase. Repetition builds memory. Yes, we can! Make America great again! Black Lives Matter! These phrases become shorthand for entire movements. That's not by accident. When a leader repeats a phrase, they are training you to feel something every time you hear it. The question to ask yourself, what exactly is being promised by that phrase? And is there a plan to deliver it? Number 3, Us versus them. Every great social movement has named an injustice. But there is a crucial difference between naming a system that is broken and naming a group of people as the enemy. One rallies people toward justice, the other rallies people toward resentment. Be alert to the leaders who need a villain, because when the enemy shifts easily from one group to the other, you're not dealing with a principled position. You are dealing with a political strategy. Number 4, the appeal to fear. Fear is the most potent emotion a leader can invoke, and sometimes it's warranted. There are real dangers in the world that leaders must address honestly. But when fear is manufactured, exaggerated, or used to justify the suspension of rights, due process, or democratic norms, that is not leadership. That is manipulation. And history repeats this lesson with uncomfortable regularity. Now let's talk about the rhetorical toolkit and how to vet what you hear. This is the part I care about the most, because knowing what rhetoric exists is not enough. You need a personal toolkit for navigating it. And here are a few practices I want us to all consider and adopt, and perhaps teach our children. 1. Separate the feeling from the fact. After you hear a statement or a speech, pause. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And then ask, what did they actually say? These are two different questions. A great communicator can make you feel something without saying anything factually true. Your first job is to notice the emotional response and then deliberately set it aside long enough to examine the substance. Then ask what exactly is being promised. Vague promises are the refuge of leaders who don't have real plans, and we hear that all the time. I will fix it. We will win. Things will be great. Push past the emotion of these statements and ask, how? By when? Who pays? Who benefits? Who's left out? If a leader cannot answer or won't answer these questions, that is not information. And what has the leader accomplished in the past? Be mindful of that. Then check the track record. The ethos, the credibility must be earned over time. What has the leader actually done? Not said, not promised, done. Look for consistency between their words and their actions over years, not just during the campaign season. Leaders who ask for your trust deserve to have their record examined. Notice who's left out of the story. Every leader tells a story about their community. Ask whose voices are in the story and who are missing. A leader who only speaks to one slice of the community, even compellingly, is not a leader for everyone. True leadership requires holding the complexity of many people's realities at once. Diversify your information sources. This one is hard in the age of algorithms. Your social media feed is designed to show you content that confirms what you already believe. So make a deliberate practice of reading sources that challenge you. I'm not saying believe everything you read. I am saying expose yourself to more than one version of reality before forming a conclusion. Watch for the shifting villain. I mentioned this earlier. Be suspicious of the leaders who always have an enemy. But the enemy keeps changing. Immigrants, elites, the media, the deep state, the corporations, whoever is convenient. If the enemy shifts but the leader's power never does, the enemy was never really the point. Protect your children's critical thinking. At Orator Academy, we teach children not just to speak, but to question, to structure an argument, to listen for the other side. These skills are the armor of a democratic citizen. If your child can look at a statement and say, what's that evidence? What's the counter argument? They are far less vulnerable to manipulation. And this is the most urgent civic education of our time. And I let my students question me. Distinguish between comfort and truth. Sometimes a leader's words feel true because they make us feel good. They validate our identity, our grievances, our sense of who we are. That feeling of recognition is powerful and it's often exploited. The truth doesn't always make you feel good. In fact, good leadership often asks something hard of you. Be wary of any leader whose message requires nothing of you except your loyalty. How will they represent if you're not part of their team? No. Now let's reflect a bit. Something personal for a moment. My personal reflection. I have spent much of my life in civic spaces, school board, planning board, zoning board, community meetings. I have seen the best of local leadership. Neighbors who show up because they genuinely care, who do the unglamorous work of governance with honesty and humility. And I have also seen the other thing. The meeting where someone says exactly what the room wants to hear and nothing that they said was actually true or credible. What I have learned in this is the antidote to manipulative rhetoric is not cynicism. It is not all politicians are liars and tuning out. That is exactly what poor leadership wants, and a disengaged, exhausted public. The antidote is a citizenry that is engaged, discerning, and vocal. People who show up, people who ask questions, people who teach their children that their voice matters. And that truth matters more than tribe. Only then can you serve efficiently. We are living in a moment that demands more of us as listeners, as thinkers, and as citizens than perhaps any time in the recent memory. The pace of information is overwhelming. The stakes feel enormous, and the voices competing for your attention, your trust, and your vote are louder than ever. But here is what I want you to leave you with today. You are not powerless in the face of rhetoric. You have a mind, an intelligent one at that. You have history to learn from. You have the ability to pause before you react, to question before you follow, and to lead with your values rather than your fears. Whether it's a political leader, a parent, or a podcast host, they should leave you more curious, more empowered, and more connected to your own judgment. If a voice consistently leaves you more afraid, more dependent, and more certain that only one person can save you, pay attention to that. This is what Orator Academy is built on. The belief that when people, especially young people, learn to speak with clarity, conviction, listen with discernment, and think with courage, democracy gets stronger. Communities get stronger. Families get stronger. Thank you for being here today on OATS UNCUT. If this episode moved you, challenged you, made you think, share it with someone, and I would love to hear from you. What rhetorical moves have you noticed in the leaders around you? What has made you trust someone or lose trust in them? Until next time, keep listening critically, speaking honestly, and showing up. And that's how we elevate. We shall meet again. Until next time.